Hello students, this is your overview of syntax. So with syntax, this is an element of style. So it's another choice an author can make about how to put together individual sentences within their work. So I want you to think about it like a fence. So a fence has all these individual sections that you put in a row to put together, and you put a gate somewhere in that fence. And so I want you to imagine this is the gate, right? We could put this over here and move this section of the fence here, right? And it would still create a fence with an opening, a way to get out. This is what syntax is like, only instead of that gate, we're kind of talking about the period in the sentence, the place where it can end and make sense so that you can get out of the sentence and move on to the next one. And the pieces within that sentence can be moved around in different ways and still make sense. So for example, here in my syntax example, snow fell. I could put a period there. We could exit the sentence right here. But instead it goes on for hours and hours, for what felt like centuries, for nourishment of long, dry soil. And I want to show you guys that syntax is actually about these individual units and how they're structured. So I could instead say, for hours and hours, snow fell. For what felt like centuries, for nourishment of long, dry soil. So the idea is that you can move around pieces of that sentence and have that period, the way out of the sentence, come at different places. I could even take what I do actually have as the period, put it at the front, right? And still make this sentence make sense. So syntax is quite simply the structure of that individual sentence, how its parts are put together, and the idea that people can make different choices with that. So I want to remind you that you have a handout on different types of syntax that we'll be looking at, and I'll link this in this video assignment so you can easily look at it again. I'm going to go through an overview of the different types. So the very first one is a simple sentence. It's got a subject, a verb, meaning it's got the action and the thing or person doing the action, and it's a complete thought. We get to the end and it makes sense. So very simple sentence, snow fell. It's got a verb, it's got the thing that did the verb, and when I finish the sentence, it makes sense. So what we want to start thinking about is, how would this appeal to an audience? What reaction might you get if you have this really short, simple sentence? So when I give you these examples of the appeals, there's so many more ways it could. This is just to get you to start thinking. So if I'm making a logical point, if it's short and simple, it's really clear. Or maybe the audience is really tired and I'm trying to mimic that and highlight how tired they are. So I just have these short sentences because I can't produce more. So that's a simple sentence. Then, like I said, this is building on it, right? So I still have my simple sentence here, snow fell. But for a cumulative sentence, the idea is this sentence could end right here and make complete sense. But the author has chosen to continue adding on more and more information after that part. So for hours and hours, for what seemed like a century, for the nourishment of dry earth, and it keeps going on and on. So imagine how this might appeal to an audience. Well, maybe that speaker is trying to get the audience frustrated with a problem in the world, and so they keep going on, and the audience is thinking, my gosh, just stop it. Or maybe there's a logical point and you keep putting more and more facts on top of it to drive home the point. So cumulative, it could end a lot earlier and make sense, but a lot keeps getting added on. Periodic sentence is the opposite of a cumulative. It will not make sense and be complete with a verb and the thing or person doing that action until we get to the end. So you'll notice here, snow fell is at the very end of the sentence. So all that stuff is tacked on at the beginning for hours and hours, for what seemed like a century, for the nourishment of dry earth. None of that is a complete sentence. We don't know what is for these things. So it can't end until we get to snow fell. So in this case, it might build up suspense or excitement in an audience, like you're waiting to see, like, what's going to end this sentence? How does it make a point? Or maybe it cause frustration, like the speaker is saying more and more problems in the world, and you're just waiting to hear what that solution is, and you're just frustrated with it. So it builds up before it makes sense. Then parallelism. This is where there's a similarity in how something is structured. So in this case, for example, the repetition of for what seemed like a century, for the nourishment of dry earth, for hours and hours, that for plus something else keeps getting repeated. And that might appeal by, giving equal weight to things, comparing them, showing they're the same, there's something logical there. Or it might compare unequal things and raise a question. So I have these things in parallel structure. They're put together the same, but they aren't the same. And so then I start asking a question and thinking through that logic. So it's repetition in a whole phrase. For hours and hours. For what seemed like a century. For the nourishment of dry earth. So that sort of repetition. There's a more general kind of repetition as well, where anything is getting repeated in a sentence. So for example, a government of the people, by the people, for the people. You might choose to focus just on the people, keeps getting repeated. Maybe it's drawing out pride or enthusiasm. Something gets repeated and every time people get more and more excited. Or maybe it's emphasizing this object and its role. So those are, there's one more. Rhetorical question. I think you guys know this one. So just a question that does not require an answer. It draws attention to something. So if you believe climate change is real and you worry about it in your children, why wouldn't you take action? The idea there is that the answer is supposed to be obvious. Like you have all the feelings in place to take action, so do it. There's no reason not to, right? So highlighting and making obvious and logical point. Or maybe it's sarcastic. Like maybe you're trying to shame that audience into something. So those are your syntactical structures. What I want to emphasize is that your rhetorical analysis of syntax, exact same process as it is for all the other elements. There's nothing different here. It's just a different type of style element that you're looking at. So you start with the description. So Lincoln employs inspiring, so some kind of adjective for what it's doing, parallelism to describe the foundation of the U.S. government. So this gets repeated. Preposition of the people. Preposition by the people. Preposition for the people. This is both repetition and parallelism. The structure is the same, something gets repeated. So then you say, okay, well, how does this appeal? What does this person want to get from the audience because of that structure? By repeating the structure of a preposition followed by the people, Lincoln emphasizes the supremacy of people in the government, appealing to their pride and patriotism in, that should say their quest, I'll fix that, their quest for equality and liberty. So he wants to get from them pride that their government is about people, patriotism, they believe in their country. And then how would it serve purpose? Well, when they're reminded that they share this belief in equality and democracy with Lincoln, they're more likely to trust and support his efforts to free all people. And I have a typo there that I will fix. So syntax, again, all of our process for rhetorical analysis is the same. We're just looking at individual different elements.